Here's a headline you don't read every day. Yesterday, the President of the United States accused his predecessor, President Barack Obama in this case, of treason.
On Obama and the spying situation, this idea that they were spying on your campaign, you've been asked before about what crime he would have potentially committed. But I remember you talking to
treason. Treason.
That's what I was going to ask.
It's treason. Look,
it's treason.
Look. When I came out a long time ago, I said they've been spying on my campaign. I said they've been taping, and that was in quotes, meaning a modern-day version of taping. It's all the same thing, but a modern-day version. But they've been spying on my campaign.
Again, no evidence of the spying. In the series of tweets yesterday, President Trump continued to spout baseless conspiracy theories about mail-in voting. He claimed without evidence, quote, rigged 2020 election, millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. While many parts of the country have moved toward mail-in ballot options during the pandemic, more than 32 million Americans voted by mail in 2016 with no signs of widespread fraud, foreign or domestic. President Trump went on to add, we voted during World War I and World War II with no problem, but now they're using COVID in order to cheat by using mail-ins. So, John Meacham, as you say, we don't want to get mired in all of Donald Trump's tweets, but these are significant tweets. Number one, his accusing his predecessor, President Obama, of committing treason against his campaign, again, without any evidence of that. And also this latest series of tweets where he's talking about mail-in voting. He appears to be falling back on that and perhaps softening the ground in case he loses the free and fair election. He will say, well, it was rigged from the beginning. He's using that language already.
Yeah, that was the most significant thing that happened yesterday. You're exactly right. He's laying a predicate for raising fundamental questions about a result that he fears will run against him. And so if you want to know the significance of Tulsa or the significance of whether folks show up in the desert today, it is really about the result of the campaign that he's thinking about. And one of the things we know from the last 4 or 5 years is that the more he says something, the more a significant part of the population will believe it, or at least pretend to believe it for whatever purpose. And I think that's in many ways, I use this word advisedly, the scariest thing about this, because without practicing psychiatry without a license, he was accusing someone else yesterday of treason on the same day he was talking about subverting our democracy. So you wonder if there was some projection there. The thing about Obama, look, this is how Trump got to this party. It was by raising racist questions about falsely raising questions about Barack Obama's birth certificate. Right. I mean, that's one of the reasons he is president. That is the ticket he rode to political prominence in this particular era. And so his hostility to Obama is of a piece. There are very few coherent elements, actually, of the Trump world. But a discomfort with, dislike of, and disdain for Barack Obama is one of them. And I suspect one of the things that's driving him a little crazy right now is that Biden is more elusive. Biden is in some ways, and I say this with respect, a more conventional political figure, right? It's just harder. Barack Obama was the first African-American president. Hillary Clinton was trying to be the first female president. You know, that gave Trump, with his kind of Archie Bunkerism, except Archie Bunker was fictional, gave him targets. Biden's not that, right? Biden is someone who comes from culturally the world that gave Trump a lot of inroads in 2016. And I think at some level, he has an existential fear that Biden will take those folks away.
Yeah, mail-in ballots are a big focus for Stacey Abrams. Madeleine Albright, I've been talking to her on the phone, very concerned about really trying to shore up the election process. That's where they feel the president's going to go to try and win. President Trump continues to rail against mail-in voting. He's been doing so on Twitter. But interesting, his closest aides reportedly have embraced it. for years. According to election records obtained by the Associated Press, Vice President Mike Pence and half a dozen other of Trump's senior advisors repeatedly have voted by mail. You know why? Because it works. Military does it too. More than 3 years after leaving the Indiana governor's residence, Pence still votes absentee from that address. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos has permanent absentee voting status in her home state of Michigan. Trump's campaign manager, Brad Parscale, voted absentee in Texas in 2018 and did not vote in the general election 2 years earlier when Trump's name was on the ballot. Meanwhile, 2 other senior Trump campaign officials have repeatedly voted by mail in New Jersey, while 1 senior campaign advisor has voted by mail in Georgia since 2014. In addition, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany has voted by mail in every Florida election that she has participated in since 2010, according to a Tampa Bay Times review of her voting history. And according to the Washington Post, Ivanka Trump attempted to vote absentee for New York mayor in 2017, but sent the ballot too late. Her husband, White House senior advisor Jared Kushner, requested an absentee ballot for the New York mayoral election in 2017, but didn't return it. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway voted absentee in New Jersey in 2018. Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel also voted absentee in Michigan multiple times. And, of course, Donald Trump himself, who voted absentee in New York in 2018 and in Florida's March primary. Jonathan Lemire, look, he's losing in swing states. He's got nothing to say about Joe Biden except that he's sleepy. And the show is tired and the seats won't fill. This is the next battleground for this president. Somehow, whether it be asking for foreign help in winning the election or tampering with the election or just trying to undermine the process, would that be fair to argue that his focus might be on how to win a different way?
I think, Mika, that certainly what you're spelling out here is causing rising alarm among Democrats and good government groups and who are wondering where the president is going with all of this. We have seen him for weeks now really rail against the idea of mail-in voting, suggesting without evidence that it could lead to widespread voter fraud. Let's remember that in 2016, he claimed there was voter fraud then. Coincidentally, he thought there'd be about 3 or 4 million illegal votes cast. Coincidentally, that was about the margin of his defeat in the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. He even signed a commission to study that. There was no evidence that any of that happened either. And I do think we've seen disturbing scenes in Georgia. There's real concerns about the election in Kentucky, the one in Wisconsin that was held during the real height of the pandemic in that state, about restrictions to access to voting. And I think that there is a sense here that that is one of the plays that the Republican Party is trying to use, is trying to just simply make it harder for people to vote. They'll have their arguments as to why they're trying to do that, but Democrats are saying they're simply trying to take away one of the fundamental rights of the American people because they believe, the Republicans think, and everyone agrees, a lower turnout race probably helps Donald Trump. And you're right, Rika. Right now, they're stumbling. Saturday night in Tulsa was meant to be the big campaign reboot, to sort of restart, to energize the president, reassure nervous Republicans who are seeing these polls, and instead they have just been faced with not only faced with thousands of empty seats, but real questions about the message and direction of the campaign, the status of his senior staff, and whether they can ever possibly elude the virus, which of course is infecting more members of his own staff.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.